Good morning. It's time for our daily devotion, and today we are in Acts chapter 10. Here we have the story of Peter's vision and of his ministry to the Gentile Cornelius. This is a great story because it has such great application and relevance to our lives today. Here Peter is, a good Jew, a Jew who is keeping the dietary laws, who is trying to keep himself pure and clean according to the Old Testament laws, who's trying to keep himself from being contaminated by the Gentile, not going to their homes, those kinds of things. And all of a sudden, while he's up on his roof, he has a vision. And he sees this sheet which lets down animals that are considered unclean by the Mosaic law of the Old Testament, and the voice comes and says, "Rise and eat." Peter protests, of course, and says, "I've never eaten anything unclean." And 3 times he has this vision in succession. Now, just about the time he has this vision for the 3rd time, there's a knock on his door. It's some Gentile men who've come on behalf of Cornelius, who say, "Come and preach the message of Jesus to Cornelius. He wants to hear about Christ." And of course, Peter has his reservations because of the fact that he's a Gentile. But he remembers the words that have come at the end of this vision, which are these words: "What God has called clean, don't call unclean." In other words, once God has sanctioned it, once God has called you to it, don't fall back on your old way of thinking and the traditions of the past, but instead understand that God is calling you to do a new thing. He's calling you to take a message to a new people. He's calling you to expand your vision and to enlarge your vision to see all people who need the message of Jesus. Now, this is relevant in our world today, especially the church today, because of the fact that many of us come into this walk with Jesus with some preconceived notions and some prejudices. Most of us didn't choose to feel the way we do about people, at least initially. We were taught some things, and we kind of brought some baggage with us into adulthood that we were taught as children. The attitudes of our parents and the churches we grew up in all have a part to play in how we feel about people. And many times, even today, in 2018, when we see people of different races or different economic backgrounds or from different places walk into our church buildings, we see eyebrows raised. We see people begin to whisper. And why is that? It's because their traditions and their preconceived notions, the baggage they have brought with them to this point in their journey, tells them that black people and white people, Hispanic people and Asian people shouldn't all worship together. They should have their own churches. Or people from poor communities or poor families, people who are on welfare, who are apartment dwellers, single moms, all those kinds, don't really fit in our church. There are probably places they can go, but they don't really fit in our particular place. And so we see those prejudices that we have begin to surface even in the church. But what God is saying to us through this story in Acts chapter 10 is that God has called us, and he called these men in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, to take the message not just to the Jews in Jerusalem and in Judea, but to the Samaritans in Samaria and to the uttermost parts of the earth. People who didn't look like them, people who weren't of the same economic status as them, people who violated their traditions and who didn't go along with the things they'd always believed, people who kind of stretched the limits on their way of thinking. And this vision that Peter has instructs him, don't be limited by your traditions and by your past thinking and by the preconceived notions and the baggage that you brought into this thing. God's calling you to do a new thing. He's called you to be a reflection of Jesus to a new people. No boundaries, no barriers. Everyone should be accessible to the gospel. What God has called clean, don't call unclean. I hope today that your prayer is that God will help you to see people the way Jesus does, that he will help you to see people without all of the tints and the lenses that we've used in the past, and instead see people through the lens of Jesus' life and ministry and love, and that we can reach them without prejudice, and that we can embrace them when they come to our churches and into our lives, and that we can love them the same as we love everyone else who looks like us, who talks like us, who behaves like us, who has the same amount of money as us, and in doing so, take the gospel message to a world that needs so desperately to hear it. Now, go make it a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.